On Insightful Inspiration, Isabelle Landreville chats with a mosaic of brilliant individuals that help shape the insights industry. We live stream episodes to LinkedIn, and you can listen on all major podcast networks. Join us, and please subscribe so you won't miss our guests' insightful inspiration and hear what drives them and how they get inspired to be successful in the insights industry and beyond. Insightful Inspiration is brought to you by Sylvester & Co., an award-winning qualitative research firm with half a century of experience.
Welcome back to Insightful Inspiration, where we spotlight bold thinkers shaping the future of insights and draw inspiration. I'm your host, Isabelle Landreville, the proud owner of Sylvester & Co. Today's guest is Victoria Diaz, strategic insights lead at Google and a rising star in the insights industry. With a career that spans the agency side at Nielsen to client side, namely Unilever, Mondelez, and now Big Tech, Victoria has made waves by transforming raw data into compelling stories that drive in strategy, and all before turning 30. She is so impressive. I've spoken to her recently at a Wire event out in Toronto, and it was just mind-blowing to me. So I really wanted her to come in on this podcast so that we can all sort of draw inspiration from her success. And so we'll talk about building a personal brand early, translating data into strategic influence, and what it takes to become a thought leader while still climbing the ladder. Victoria, welcome to Insightful Inspiration.
Hey, Iz, thank you so much. And what a lovely setup. I'm feeling so important now. Thank you.
Of course. That's all about what we do here. And I think there's so much to draw on from. I think you've been great. Like you did this amazing post when you turned 30 and celebrated. And then these are the 30 things that you're totally owning sort of the fact that you're a rising star and that you're young and that you're climbing. And so I really, I feel like you have the confidence that I have, 25 years in that I should have maybe 5 or 10 years in. So there's a bit of envy there because we do span 2 generations and we'll get into that. But yeah, it's lovely to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the invitation, for the space. This is lovely.
Fabulous. So how about we get ourselves going so that we bring in people into the fold here because we're definitely in the nooks. Let's bring people in. So you've clearly had an impressive journey already from Mondelez to Google before 30. Now, how did you map out your career path and did you map it out? How about you with that?
That's a really interesting question. I think like subconsciously, I was always very intentional with my career. I'm a big believer in not letting just things happen for the sake of letting them happen. And there was a few aha moments, but I would say the first one, which basically, streamlined everything for me was when I was back in Brazil. Studying marketing and communications. And I remember my second year of college, one of my professors was going on and on about consumer patterns and data and how much, there's a lot of like psychology behind what we do, what we do and why we buy the brands that we buy. And she mentioned this pioneer data-driven company called Nielsen that I never heard of, that was like actually using that consumer data to sell to the big companies and shape the industry. And I was like, wow, that sounds fabulous. I want to learn more. And after that class specifically, I went to the Nielsen website. I kind of like saw that they had an internship on, and I was like, okay, let me apply and see how things go. And I got the internship. I started there my first 4 years of my career working with the biggest account that they had, which was Coca-Cola at the time. And I think that was the big foundational for everything that I did after, throughout the 10 years that I've been working with insights now. It was such a small moment, but when you see the ripple effect and how things actually go into chain, and like turns out to be so much different. Like looking back, it's easy to see, but when you're living it, it's hard to spot. But I think that was, the first big one.
Mm-hmm. And did you know at the time that this was going to be like a turning point or maybe the first step to unlock something?
I think I knew. I didn't know how much or how big, but I knew that if I got that internship, doors would open and I would learn. And I would like put myself into rooms and situations that I would never be able to get if I didn't get that internship. So it was really interesting. And every year that I spent there, I kind of like saw that kind of solidifying as more.
Yeah. And you talk a lot about intent, and you and I have talked about intent because that's kind of how we live our lives, quite intentionally. where does that come from? Like, I have a story answer of why and when I decided to be intentional and what happened. But do you have one? Like, what made you act with such intent in that way?
That is an interesting question. I don't know. I think it was like in the beginning of my career was more of a drive to learn, and it was very natural. I don't think I actually did something that was like calculated in a sense of like, oh, I need to go to that specific position to then unlock that one. It was not like a chess game. It was more about, I love doing this. Let me do more of this. And then more doors would open as I would do those things. And then being able to understand first, I would take all the opportunities that I could get, because I think you're in the moment that you want to grow and kind of like learn and test things. But then later on, you kind of like know and learn a little bit more of which ones are best for your ROI, right? Like which ones should I put my energy a little bit more, or get what are the consequences or the after effect that I want from that specific route. So the intent changed along the years, but I would say it started with a lot of passion and curiosity. Like I really loved what I did from day one.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because 10 years ago, I hired someone who's more than 10 years in, who's been extremely successful. And it's really interesting how the one thing he came in with SWOT analysis, and he was fresh out of school and sort of leveraging that intention and whatnot. He said, the only thing I have is attitude, but I have the best attitude and outlook you will ever wish and hope for, which I think is also what, if correct me if I'm wrong, kind of what you're leaning into, which is coming in, you do have to like create opportunities, seize opportunities. Like, don't say no to something that hasn't been offered to you, right?
Absolutely, especially in the beginning. Like you really have to be open-minded and eager to learn. And I feel like when you get to be on the other side that is managing people, you can clearly see the ones that are really passionate about what they do and have that hunger. And you want to feed them. You want to say, yeah, take that as an opportunity. Go for that, project. Put yourself in that very uncomfortable situation. I want to see you grow. That's how you grow. So like, yeah, it's really something that I would say like early on, go with your passion, but also make sure to be open to as many opportunities as you can.
Yeah. And I think if you fuel this passion, I think there's authenticity and like genuineness that comes out of it.
Mhm.
And you can't fake that. Like I
Mhm.
feel like managing people, you see those that like climb to climb and they have like a more or perfection to climb. And then you've got people who just work through it and do it in a more authentic way. And I think that is part of the intention and the passion as well, right?
Yeah, and I remember when I was at Nielsen, we were talking about career and progressing and how what are the factors that actually make you grow. And there's like I remember there was a training saying that there's like 5 factors that move talents. Some are more moved by like salaries, other by titles, other by like challenges, other by autonomy. So like also it's important as a self-reflecting to figure out what actually moves you. Like for you, maybe a little bit more about like leading a big project and actually having a bigger salary, or the other way around. So like make sure you kind of like early on also map those things out, because that would also help you shape some of the opportunities you say yes to.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And so, on your end, building off that, was there a moment early on when you realized that you didn't want to be just, I don't want to say just, but you wanted to be
Mhm.
more than the behind the scenes analyst and really wanted to take more of a leadership role?
Yeah, I would say at Nielsen, this again happened very organically as I progressed in my career. I started as an intern, ended up as a senior executive there, but then it got to a point where you kind of like feel stagnant, right? Like I got to that point and Nielsen was like, okay, it's really cool to be able to, because foundationally speaking for my career, Nielsen was really amazing to create the breadth of being able to act as a consultant. So I would be able to like access room for different clients in different industries that if I had started out with a specific company, I wouldn't be able to. I'll be able to only to work with their brands or their ways. But in Nielsen, I was able to like work around with Coca-Cola in one project, and then Nestlé in another project, and then L'Oreal, and like walk into rooms with C-level stakeholders that I would never be able to do so if I was just an analyst starting as in a L'Oreal, for example. So that was really cool to put myself into very like high stakes situations and shape a little bit of the foundation. But then after 4 years, I was like, okay, it's amazing to go and talk and share and have these big presentations and big moments. But then when I walk out the room, I don't see what happens anymore because I'm just a consultant. I'm project based. I want to see what's the end to end. I want to lead a project from the start to finish. I want to see like what happened. Like why I'm not seeing this product on the shelves because legal got in the way. It's a supply capacity. Like what's going on? So I think for me was the big change, and that was the biggest change. Not the biggest, but the big first change in my career when I decided to jump and leap to Unilever, to the client side. And it was a professional change and a personal change. So it was taking the lead in terms of like going to the client side and leading a project end to end, but also taking the lead of my life a little bit because it was the first time I was living by myself. I was moving cities, coming from Rio, where I'm originally from, to São Paulo, which is the biggest city in Brazil. Basically, like comparing to Canada would be Toronto, where like all the big companies are a financial district and so on. So I was like January 2020, living alone for the first time, this big city, knowing anyone, starting this new big girl job. And I was like, okay, now things got real. Now it's happening. And then 3 months later, pandemic hit. So you can see the twists and turns. But it was really interesting. And I feel like that was the first time I was taking the real lead in both ends, personally and professionally.
Yeah. And I think they come hand in hand for some reason. Because the same thing happened to me. I feel like there's something about the intent that is not just it. As much as there's this notion, well, I don't believe in work-life balance because you just juggle it, like you just make it work. Like at one point, you're like, "There's this project I really want to do," and blah blah blah, and then there's my son has a tournament. Like it's just juggling. Like there's no balance. Like every day is not perfect. Like something's got to give at one point. The goal is to not drop a ball. But I think the intention also comes back from having one fuel the other and the other kind of fuel and work hand in hand. I don't think you can have intent in your career without sort of having intent in your real life.
Yeah, you said the same thing happened to you. So you have this big change of also like moving cities or doing something completely different.
Yeah. So my first job, so your first job was moving, but in the same country. So when I graduated, one of my big aha moments on my end was very much in school as well. And I think it was like my last semester, second to last semester. But I had the same teacher, the same prof for all my classes. There was like 3 marketing classes left, and it was the same teacher. And I'm like, oh, he better be good because he wasn't like he was invited from France, and I'm like, he better be good. Anyways, oh my God, was he ever good? Like he ended up being my thesis director. Like there was just a whole bunch of like, it was just like, I feel like there's like 4 key people in my life. I think four key people in my life that I feel like I met them and then my life became something else. Like it wasn't opportunities or like specific things or maybe like I ended up deciding, but there was like these 4 people that I met that allowed me to act with intent, allowed me to get to know myself a bit more and sort of my values and my compass. And so I think initially the love for research, the love, because I come from like more of a academia and sort of that type of research initially. And so back in the day, and so my big move was I went from Ottawa to Paris. So Paris in my mind is my first apartment, my first real job, my first living on my own, my first like
crazy.
I know. So Paris has this kind of, I have a relationship to Paris that's quite unique. And it was really amazing because I did research in so many countries and whatnot. But the other point that came back that happened is that something happened on my personal life, in my personal life out in Canada. And it sort of allowed me to say, okay, what am I prioritizing? Do I want this amazing sort of career that I can boast about? Because people are like, oh, you live in Paris. And like, you know, there's like on paper, it looked really good. But then I would also like not be in a relationship and like I was far from my family. Like there was a lot of stuff happening on the other side. And I'm like, I kind of feel a little bit empty.
Yeah, there's a lot of invisible prices you pay that people don't actually see.
Yeah. And then there was also this notion of code shifting. Like I've always code shifted in Canada because, you know, Quebec versus English and French, and Quebec versus Ontario. But my own entire family code switch, like people code switch, where now I was like, when I came back, I felt, and you probably relate to this, but I felt people are like, oh, you're like, you feel French, or you're not the same. And then I would come back from Canada back to Paris over the 4 years I was out there, and they go, oh, you feel Canadian. And I'm like, I belong in the middle of the Atlantic.
Yeah.
I was like, anyway, so I think there was a lot of things like that. And then I had a moment where I said, you know what, I'm going to curate and pick quality over quantity.
Yeah.
And so I kind of turned my back on just checking boxes and having bragging rights, maybe. I don't know if that's what I should be, like, the phrase I would use. But yeah, so it might not look as good on paper, but it's so much more meaningful.
100%. And we have so many people that are like so amazing with their titles and LinkedIn jobs and like, posts, but in the back end, they're like burning out. And like that you have to do what's right for you and understand you and like see how much it's worth like success versus your personal choices. So I completely understand. Like being an immigrant myself, how many anniversaries, how many like birthdays, how many big events I'm missing by living in Canada and having this big fancy job. Like there's like always something that I'm juggling on, and making sure that as long as it's still worth for me in a holistic level, I'm gonna stay. And if tomorrow it's not, that's fine. I can make a decision based on that. But it's always be open and reassessing,
Yeah. And I think being honest with yourself as well, I think, is part of it.
Yeah.
I married a Quebecer, Bouchard, which I love dearly. I still find him extremely cute after like 20 years, but it's amazing. Anywho, all to say that so we picked Montreal because neither of us are from Montreal, but I work in Toronto and I spend my weekends in Montreal. I love this notion of code switching. I love this notion of the best of both worlds, and I was able to your point, sort of intentionally make that happen and create that. Because I wanted to live in both. I didn't want to choose. Yeah. Because choosing is big. If you're used to coach shifting, if you're used to two cultures, it is something.
Yeah.
That you don't want to
agree.
stuff. Yeah. So coming back to like thought leadership and leadership, you mentioned LinkedIn and sort of putting yourself out there. You've really posted quite a bit. You've really sort of put yourself out there. Is that with intent, or is there something else behind that? Because I love reading your posts.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like LinkedIn is actually, or even like being here talking with you, is like participating in podcasts, my third one. I think it's all more about having fun than really trying to get something out of it. You see, I don't do any like cadency or frequency. It's more about like, oh, I saw this thing is super interesting. Oh, AI has a new mode whatsoever. I want to like talk about it a little bit with my network. But I think there's a difference between thought leadership and your personal brand, which we're going to talk into.
Yeah, tell me.
Also, when it comes to like work landscape. So, for example, working with insights, as you know, is all about thought leadership, even with the small interactions to like when you're in a big stage. And I think that for all the young insights professional out there, it's like, it's the opportunity to drive data and business that's going to put you into rooms that you will never be able to go into because you have that ability. So picking up that thought leadership part of you and really making it your superpower, that's where the magic happens. Like 25-year-old walking to a room with C-level executives and telling them what they should do with their $1 billion brand strategy. Like, how cool is that? Like, what world will I be able to do that if not with insights, right? Yeah. So I would say that's something that 100%, if you're early on in the insights career, think about thought leadership as your holy water and try to leverage that as early on as possible. But with your personal brand, that's where you have to be more mindful and maybe less, I don't want to say strategic, but like maybe less corporate and more personal, because I feel like your personal brand is something that you should shape also early on by, first of all, understanding what your values are. If you don't know what your core values are, find them out. For me, a little bit of my core values is authenticity, curiosity. So like I make sure to make those values shine on in every interaction that I have, that it's from small to big. But also the fact that you should be able to double down into what your weaknesses are or what will make you different. So I'm going to give myself as an example, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm always moving around. And I think the biggest shift for me was coming from Brazil to Canada, which is a completely different culture, climate, culture, language, everything. And in the beginning, I would like, okay, I did some very strategic moves. For example, I moved here and I didn't want to make any Brazilian friends. I just want to talk to Canadians for the first 6 months. I just wanted to like learn as much as I could about the culture, the supermarket brands, the what people do on the weekends, what are the Canadian hobbies. Like I really want to immerse myself in the culture. And in the beginning I would notice that I would go a little bit too far in terms of like trying to hide my accent, trying to not tell people like first off that I was Brazilian or Latina because I didn't want to be put in a box. But then moving on to that, I realized that's actually my superpower, because on a professional setting is where I get to, tell executives about what it's like on the other side of the ocean, what it's like with a consumer that is completely different, come from a very much harsh background from what they are seeing right now. When we call about like crisis and recession, like this is every day in Brazil. So let's talk about it and let's double down on it. And I have the expertise. And imposter syndrome is something that really haunted me throughout my career. I think for every like young professional, this is going to be like something that it's present, unfortunately, especially for women. But I would say that for Google right now, even now, knowing that like I am very well adjusted in Canada, I have an amazing relationship with my boyfriend. I live here and I love it. I had so many validations. Even joining Google, I had so much imposter syndrome, because think about someone that doesn't have a tech background, doesn't have a Canadian background, doesn't have a telecommunications background. And I say that because my clients at Google are from telecommunications. And what I know, I'm Brazilian. I just moved here. I've been working with CPG for 10 years. So like, what can I bring on that adds value? And that's where the exercise goes all over again to see, well, but I do have brand building expertise. So how can I bring that to telco, which is an industry that is a sea of sameness for Canadians? I do have a very interesting, consumer perspective that I can bring on. I have, I don't know, like global, like cadency and I live this different life. So how can I bring this to my everyday conversation? So you know what I mean? Like there's so many like little things that you can put as your superpower. And I feel like if you just put yourself in the box in your own mind, you're not going to get there. So making sure that you take your weaknesses and make it as a strength is what I would say number one thing.
And it's really interesting. So there's one thing, and this is why I think we met like your first week here, to be honest. I remember I'm like, you landed in the worst winter storm ever. And then I ended up sort of getting tips and tricks of how to navigate winter and fashion from you at the end. Like, bravo. But but I think there's something like there's a mentor that told me something very early on that kind of plays on that, which is if you everybody has weaknesses and everybody has flaws, and that is the beauty of being human and the messiness of life. But if you actually double down on your strengths and really make them shine and really fuel them and nurture them to other people's benefits in the right room so that they're valued, they will completely eclipse your weaknesses and they won't matter. They won't actually be shown. And I think that sort of ties back to what you're saying. But getting there and understanding what your superpowers are was a little bit of a challenge for me. What was your, like, did you have like a process? Did you have, if you're willing to share, but any tips and tricks of how to get there and how to identify those?
What helped me a lot was a mentor. And that's something that I really want to touch upon, because I had the opportunity to have different mentors across my career from Brazil to Canada. And like having someone more senior that been through all this, mentoring you and shaping you and helping you. I remember one day when I was in Brazil back in a team and it was like all men and I was the only woman. And I was like, but I don't know, how can I like make a difference and impact and be seen and heard? And my mentor at the time said, you're the only woman in this team and you're kicking ass. Use that as your power. Own it. Like, show your strength on that. So like that's where things started to pivot for me. And then I kind of like do the, same rinse and repeat throughout my career into different perspectives as my career was changing. So that was like a little bit of an example of how much a mentor can help you. But like, I feel like having someone that has been there before helps you, because no one gets far alone. You can get fast somewhere, but like if you decide to go alone, but you're not going to get far. Like, you need people.
Yeah.
People.
And I think getting in the right room, like I feel like I go back to, I had these 4 people like going up and they know who they are. I've like, after when at certain points or certain milestones in my career, in my life, I like write to them and sort of like die back and say, did you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of like just respect, and sort of appreciation for the impact they had. Because it's kind of interesting. You don't know the type of impact you might have on someone until that person sort of comes back and says, hey, thank you. And it could be a tiny thing sometimes, but it's so meaningful to that person. But it's interesting also that I'm a millennial, so I'm a different stage, different generation. But the mentors or the conversations I have or that I seek out is a bit more going back to intentional, going back to curating. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to talk to this person because of that. I want to talk to this person for this. So I feel I don't have, and maybe I don't know if it's evolved on your end. I don't feel like I have, like I've had a life coach, I've had different mentors, but I felt like they were more all encompassing without being generalists. And I think now I have a baseline. And so it's more like curating few things and a few sort of more niche voices and a few certain things here and there. So I don't have like a one person go to, I have a wisdom board.
That's amazing that you're able to collect those precious stones as you progress in your career. Like, I feel if you are able to do that starting early on and then keep those people around while you add on new ones, that's your like personal board of personal development and work development.
Yeah.
That's amazing. For me, it was more seasonal. Like, I would say in Brazil, I have that one specific mentor that I would go to that it started very much structured by the company. So they did hold a mentorship program. If your company had one of those, I'd highly suggest you, like for the people that are listening, I highly suggest you to tap into that. But then evolved a little bit more about like, those people actually became my personal friends and create this long lasting relationship. Then now I send a WhatsApp and a message and say, hey, I want to chat about something. Let's do that. So it evolves over time, and definitely you should be going with a little bit more intense. So because it's more structured in the beginning, I would go with a specific goal in mind, right? Like, I want to connect with this person because he or she are more senior in that specific role, or they have more background in that area that I want to work more on or skill. Now I feel like things change a little bit more. It's more about what I want to be and how this person can give me a backwards perspective. That goes over time. And I had so much luck with the people that I've connected, especially in Canada. So for example, one of my dear mentors that I have to this day, which is Camilla, you know her. She's
like the best.
Director of Insights from Mondelez. She held my hand day one, and I think was more even impactful for me because as being an immigrant, as you mentioned, like my first week here, I was sick. Like my first month, actually, I was sick 7 times that month because I didn't have the proper clothing. So she was like, let me help you with that. Let me talk to you about like multiple layers. Like for someone that really never been like to like minus 40 degrees winter. So like she helped me on a professional level and a personal level since the get-go. And we carve out, even though I'm not at Mondelez anymore, I'm at Google, we carve out time to, meet up every quarter just to talk things through. And sometimes it's only personal, sometimes it's corporate, but like, it's such an invaluable relationship. And I think people should go for that more, honestly.
Yeah, and I think it's not just the one person. You can have multiple, and they can sort of, it's, you know what? It's really interesting going back to like this imposter syndrome aspect. If people
Mhm.
are who are listening, and there's like Wire has a really good one, QRCA started a new one. Like there's some in the inside industry that are really, really good, or you can just within your company or sort of reach out to like just a fellow colleagues sometimes. But
Yeah.
there's something about it also that is quite like I've flipped the switch and I've started mentoring now. And yes, I appreciate sort of when the mentee comes in with a goal or something. And then I'm like, oh, I can't help with that, but I can help with that. So sometimes the pairing has to be meaningful because the mentor needs to sort of understand that, hey, I can help with this, or I feel I have something to bring to the table for that. So a mentor can have imposter syndrome as well. So I think transparency is key to that relationship working. But I think don't be shy to ask someone to mentor you or play a role or ask for guidance. It's the best compliment you could ever grant someone. I think so. I think it's a privilege, but it's not. You're not taking away something from your mentor. I think
Yeah.
it's also the mentor actually also grows. I think there is something about being challenged and sort of having questions being asked and sort of say, oh, that's kind of interesting because you do. I feel in my experience, I've had like you, not that I'm a mentor and we don't have that relationship at all, but sometimes you come in with really great questions because we do insights. And so our questions are good. And I'm like, oh, I need to think about that one. Let me get back to you. I'm not sure about that one. So you do get something out of it and you grow as well from that relationship.
And I think you touch upon something really interesting. Like as a mentee, come with a purpose. Like carve out time to prepare. Like the
Yeah.
question, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Do a Word doc and just like the areas that you want to touch upon, the questions that you have. I remember one day I was having this mentorship session, and the mentee came and said, "Oh, I read this article about like jobs and how jobs are evolving. Let's talk about this." And yeah, and then we've spent like 30 minutes talking about this article specifically. So that kind of like shows, first of all, respect about the mentor time and how much they're dedicating to that, and also interest. Like it's supposed to be an exchange.
Yeah.
You grow and I grow, and we're all like having this exchange together. And it's like
Yeah.
it's supposed to be productive.
But
But yeah,
I think it is that reciprocity in that relationship and transparency, which is, well, if you're asking the mentor to show up for you, how about you show up for them? I think
yeah,
there is this notion of meet me where I'm at, and I'll meet you where you're at, and together we'll like, factor something, which I think is really, really interesting. Um, we're just chatting and sort of I'm listening and sort of, but there's one thing I really wanted to sort of touch on with you is this notion, and we talked about that thought leadership and working in insights and how it gets you in some very interesting rooms. And those sort of, it gets you a seat at the table, especially on the supplier side, quite quickly, which I still love to this day. But there's also this notion of building your personal brand. How does building your personal brand sort of play out in a corporate setting? Like, is there something there as well that I know it's about fun, but is there something more to it in a corporate setting?
yes, there is. So, for example, as I mentioned, like once you understand your values and you bring that to a corporate setting, in terms of like how you want to show up to the minimum interactions, like a quick one-on-one with your manager or a quick, weekly meeting with your stakeholders to a more high stakes setting is first of all super important. And second of all, how are you going to differentiate yourself from all those like high achievers that are working with you? Like,
Hmm.
again, my experience at Google, like there's no one around me that is not a high achiever. So like the high achiever in another company is an average employee at Google. And that creates so much anxiety and so much imposter syndrome because you look around and you think, what the hell am I doing here? What do I have to bring to the table? So making sure that I'm taking those weaknesses or those points that make me different, my unique selling points to the table and saying, hey, I deserve to be here because I have this and this and that expertise that completely differs from the guy sitting next to me. That's what's going to make me, stand out and is going to help with my career here. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot to learn. Like I've been learning so much in so little time,
Mhm.
but I feel like if I am intentional on how I learn my touch points while I build this brand, it's going to be something that I'm going to like reap the rewards later on,
Yeah.
especially because whenever you change companies and countries, you kind of die in some sort of ways. Like no one knows who you are. You have to
Yeah.
tell that story again. And how you tell the story really can open more doors or don't open the doors at all.
Yeah.
So it's really important to make sure that your storytelling is your strong suit as well.
And that totally resonates with me. And the fact, like, in Canada, I've been with the same company for a really long time because I employee, partner, owner, like there was a different track, but like building your personal brand and sort of creating that story and starting from scratch in Canada, but now you've gone from Mondelez to Google. I know authenticity is one of your core sort of
Mhm.
values. Is there something though in crafting that personal story or that personal brand, still staying authentic to yourself, that you kind of limit yourself to, or you maybe, I'm not going to go there because I do, I do have to carry that personal brand over different corporate environments. I do have to, is there like something you're like a line that you would say, hey guys, don't draw a line. And maybe this is the line that I've driven, that I've sort of marked for myself.
That's a really good question. I feel like I don't have a right off the bat answer. I feel like it's more about like getting my expertise also to feel the room a little bit more.
Mm,
Like I could come as this very much specialist of CPG and say, "Hey, I know everything about brand building. Listen to me." And that's not what I do at all. Like I try to really put myself into my shoes and say, "I'm a beginner again, and I want to read the room, and I want to get the energy, and I want to understand how things are done here, and see what is my best skill set I can complement to this environment."
mm,
Because when you join, especially a big company, the culture is already set, and you are going to bring baggage from a different culture that you were before, right? Like Mondelez and Google, for example. So you also need to adapt, and I have adapted a lot on how you speak, how things are run. Like I can tell micro differences. For example, like a team meeting at Mondelez would have a certain structure. At Google, it's all about like making sure you have your 3 points out of the door. You have 10 minutes to talk, not 1 minute more, and then everything has to be more effective. So how are you going to change yourself into that, but also bring authenticity as you do that? Also bring your curiosity. So you can sprinkle those layers of your core values as you go in those interactions, but making sure you're adapting yourself
yeah.
and being flexible is important.
So start by building empathy and doing research.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I think
You
that's
got it.
kind of,
Understand your consumer first.
yeah, consumer first. Like just your consumer is just different. And
Yeah.
we're not talking about like Google's consumer or Mondelez's consumer.
No,
We're talking
we're
about the
talking about
corporate culture and
stakeholders.
the audience that you might have and the thought leadership, so that you do research. And so yeah, I think we had a guest actually on the show. I think it was last year, who said, I joined a new company as director of insights, and the entire first 6 months that I did was basically just go around, knock on everybody's door, figuratively or literally, saying, how can I help? Where are you at? What's important to you? What are your priorities? How can I make you look good? Which is, as you
And we
know,
do
the first question I ask everybody, whether they be new or it's a new project. I'm like, how can I make you look good in this context? Like, what is
that.
it going to take, right? Um, I think you have the privilege of doing it with on a longer time span than I probably have. That's why I asked the question. You
Yeah,
probably
no.
didn't have to ask the question,
And
uh,
one thing
but
that
yeah.
I was also going to add, as you're saying that, like kind of
Mhm.
like when a light bulb on me, it's like you, as I mentioned, not to be dramatic, but you die when you join a new company. Like you literally are
Yeah,
reborn. You need to like put yourself up again, and it's all about building trust. So asking, how can I make you look good? Establish first. Like those are my intent. I'm being vulnerable. That's what I want. This is my final goal, is to help you, and we can all grow together. So building trust as you go and as fast as you can will 100% make your
yeah.
life easier and unlock those doors for
Yeah.
sure.
And I think that the success part that a lot of people do actually, and I think you and I align on that, is that it's not because you're focused on helping, making a meaningful sort of difference. And it's not because you're making other people look good and building trust that way that you're necessarily falling into I have no boundaries, no sort of thought leadership, and I'm a people pleaser.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. So it's not because I'm a yes person, ask me how high to jump and I'll jump, that I lose sight of what my strategic value
Absolutely.
is and what my expertise is and, what my values are. I think it's also just not losing sight of that is a big thing. So make sure you don't fall into that sort of people pleasing aspect as well.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
completely agree. Because it's easier to be a people pleaser. You're just going to get more yeses, but that's not the goal.
But you
Like,
get no thought leadership. If you're a yes person, you're not a thought leader by design. Am I drawing too strong of a conclusion?
no, you're getting into the final result. That's it.
And justifies the means, right? Don't ask a question you don't want the answer to.
Exactly.
It always comes back to that. Is there anything? Is there anything that we talk about? Personal brand. We tie back to getting into that room and thought leadership and whatnot. And I think a big word right now, aside from insight in our industry, is storytelling. And
Mhm.
and how does storytelling sort of play into that, and sort of what's its role in sort of getting you in the right rooms with intent and maybe sort of fueling both the thought leadership aspect, but also your personal brand aspect?
Yeah. I think, first of all, you have to master the skills of storytelling. That's for everything in life, right? Like, life is all about telling the stories and pitching yourself and pitching others to do different things.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that I would say is that it was always something that I carried with me throughout CPG, but it had a big shift when I joined big tech. So, for example, the ways that you actually tell the story, first of all, needs to be catered to your audience and where you want to achieve. But like, working 10 years with CPG, and the CPG people that are listening to this can completely relate, is almost like you use the KPIs and the stats to tell the story versus actually letting the story be told and having the data points to support. And what I mean by that is that when I joined Google, it was such a completely mind shifting world for me, which was the fact that less is more. I wasn't allowed to put more than like one or two stats in the slide. Some slides even would have only like a picture or a GIF. And I would have to prove my point and land my point with those specifics, like with that structure.
Mm-hmm.
And at the beginning, I was like, I cannot do this. Like, I literally have to use 10 different data points to get to where I am or when I wanted the audience to go, like build that trust. But I've learned that actually there is a very much more interesting way to do that. And it doesn't have to be like just putting stats into people's face all the time. So how you adjust that, depending on the industry that you're in and also the audience, it's really interesting. And I feel like this is one thing in the corporate setting. And when it comes to personal brand, I don't even know how to tell you how many times I had to do the talk track about, hey, I'm Victoria, I'm working with Insights for the past 10 years, I've been in Canada, I'm an immigrant, what I learned. Like, I can do that with my eye closed in a 5 conversation or with like a big audience in a half an hour or in a job interview. And how I shape that and how I master that about the storytelling of myself is something that 100% open doors that wouldn't have been open if I didn't know how to do it. So
yeah. You need a spiel.
yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but it's not a lack of authenticity, but I think it is catering to my audience. I have multiple spiels.
I love that.
Because I have, like, I'm, Zach's mom, I'm a business owner, I'm a researcher. And it's interesting too that depending on who I've spoken to, like the owning a company and then being a good moderator, sometimes in some people becomes a dichotomy. If you're a
And
good
both are
leader,
true.
if you're a strong leader, you cannot be a good moderator because then you're not going to be empathetic. So there's something about, and it's interesting. So when I became the owner 10 years ago, there was this notion of put it out there, and I'm like, I can't, because then I become too strong to this, to that. And I've done so much qual at this point that I don't have any personal social media because people want to befriend me after spending time with me, which I feel is the biggest compliment.
I
But
love
also
that.
at what point I'm like, like I because if you want to make friends with someone, just ask them about themselves and get them to talk about themselves. Right? It's the best dating rule 101, right? Just because people remember how they feel around you, they don't remember what you've shared with them necessarily. So I think that because I get people to really talk about themselves because it's my job, then people are like, I know you. And I'm like, well, you don't, but okay. So I don't have personal social because it became an issue at the beginning. And then like respondents were befriending me on Facebook and like on Insta. And I'm like, this is kind of weird. Like
So that's why I don't have you in my Instagram. Okay, now
I don't have one. So the only social I have is LinkedIn. And whenever I do B2B research, my followers go up.
that makes so much sense. But also, like, I feel like you touch upon something really interesting. Like, you have so many different versions of you, like you as a mom, you as a CEO, you as a moderator, you as a podcaster. Like,
Yeah.
and those versions are true, but you actually cater how you're going to tell your story based on your audience and your objective. And that's literally what storytelling is about.
And I'm not changing who I am. Like I'm always, it's just, it depends on the hat I have or who I'm saying it to. I think there's something about it. But, at the end of the day, I'm clumsy as hell in the kitchen and I would live my life barefoot. I'm so the same. I would literally live my life. I am barefoot right now and typically am at the office. Me. So this is like, a little bit of a sneak peek for the audience here, but a bit of an overshare. I have this, I'm into shoes, how my love of shoes and like branded shoes. And I have an opinion on the architecture and engineering of a good heel. And any hoot, I can teach you how to find a good heel. And it's just not that useful, but I love it. And I still end up showing up with really high end shoes and taking them off every single day.
Okay, that's also you, right? Like the girl who walks in the door with a high heel shoe and the woman sitting down with no shoes. That's you.
I mean, it's still part of who I am. So I think to your point, I think you can still be yourself. I think there is, going back to where you draw the line, it's not that you hide something about yourself. I think it's not everybody needs to know everything about you in that moment. I think there is this notion of, well, what's going to build trust and what's going to get me in and what is it important that these people know about me?
Yeah.
And then you can stop there. I think there, some people don't know I'm a mom. Some people that sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes it does matter. There's something there. And then at one point there is this notion of, oh, that resonates with me and I understand where you're coming from and that's all. You don't need a whole spiel either. Sometimes you can just say, hey, that strikes a chord because.
Yeah. And then when it's relevant. Right? Like if we're talking and deciding that being a mom is not relevant, why are you going to bring that up? Like there's no reason to. So 100%. And it's all about, again, building trust and making sure that you're portraying yourself the best you can be, being true to your story and being authentic.
Yeah. Figure out which ball you want to talk about because we're all jungling multiple balls. Don't get me started on work-life balance, but anywho. Okay, I would speak to you forever because we have. So I know I can and I know we can. This was extremely amazing. Like we wrap up all of these because we do like reels and stuff, but I really do you want to play the quick fire round, which is the 4 things, which I think just wrapped up? Okay. So this comes from the French side of me, which is bouillon culture. And I really like asking the same, and maybe this is, from a researcher to another, I like asking the same question to different people. And I think this is about, insightful inspiration. This is about sparking inspiration, sparking discussions, like shifting the paradigm or something. That is the impact we're looking for. And it's interesting how most people who've come on as guests, and we're like up to almost up to 30 now. It's really interesting how there's some patterns shaping up. Well, I'll have to.
But then, just so I understand, I have to respond with one word, or can I elaborate on it?
Oh no, you can totally tell your story.
Okay.
Into it. And you can ask me too. Like it's just a fun
Yeah.
little sort of bouillon culture kind of thing. So the first one is, what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
So I always joke, if I won the lottery, you wouldn't see me walk into the office. I would be open up an animal shelter. I absolutely love animals. I have one dog that I rescued from Brazil. I brought to Canada, and like just so dear to my heart, this whole cause. So like I would 100% have a shelter and be the shelter lady, and that's it.
Be the
No
chef.
insights, just
And
love.
and is there like only dogs, or is there like anything and everything would
We
be
can
welcome?
start with dogs. We can like upgrade to goats or cats, and like life goes on. It's how about you? Would you do anything differently?
Would I do something different? I think the one thing that would stay the same is the fact that like I became a business owner because in my mind, it translated into my ability to be the person I wanted to be, the wife I wanted to be, and the mother I wanted to be
Mhm.
without compromising on my career. So I think that would kind of be the same. So I always jokingly say, if I could have popped five kids, I would have been extremely happy.
Wow.
Um, yeah, I really enjoyed being pregnant. I wasn't that lucky, but it wasn't up to me and whatever. But there's something about like helping people. There's something about, having a positive impact. There's something about I really just really, really like little people. I really like them.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I really like moderating kids. Like I just really like people, and I talk to them like just
You're
like
very open.
normal. I don't talk down to
Yeah.
kids. I don't speak kid. Like my son had the best vocabulary kind of going in. But I really find them fascinating. Well, we've done it before, but they're
That's what I was
super.
going to say. That workshop that we did with kids when I was working at Mondelez, it was such an eye-opening for me because I never had the opportunity to actually work with those little people, and how blunt and honest and authentic they are versus like a consumer that's older and doesn't want to hurt your feelings or talk about your brand. Like I was like, wow, that's amazing. I want to work with you all day.
And I really don't love politics, like just generally speaking. And so there's no politics. And they just will, have so much energy. And I think, and there isn't a single boring moment. And I get bored really easily. So I think that I'm constantly like in a movement and a thing, kind of trying to and organize things. And so my mommy group, I was kind of always the one who was like hand doing like swords of some sort out of branches with like tape, and like doing a parking lot on the floor at the airport, and like it just unleashes my creativity in a really
Super cool.
fascinating, meaningful way. Yeah. Anywho,
This
so
is-
yeah.
Well, you have the kids, I have the animals. It's all good.
I think animals are the same, but yeah, my
Yeah.
golden retriever. Yeah, Buddy is definitely my 2-year-old. Like yeah,
You're
definitely. Anywho, what is your favorite word, and is it an English one?
that's a fair question. I would say maybe change if we're talking English and Portuguese, but it's the same word in the end, which is imposter syndrome. And I think it's my favorite word. It actually became my favorite word not so long ago
Yeah.
because I feel like imposter syndrome is something that I've been dealing with my whole life in different ways. But recently I got across a study that actually was showing the origins of this word and why imposter syndrome was actually invented and exists and diagnosed it, which is in 1970s, two psychologists studied like 150 high achieving women, which basically that's when they kind of like uncovered this pattern of those women, even though had all the skills they needed to do like do well in their job or whatever they choose to be, they also feel like they always would feel like they would not belong and they were not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why imposter syndrome was created. And interesting thing of that is that there was recently a follow-up study in the early 2000s showcasing that people that are actually imposters, they don't feel imposter syndrome. And that was like mind-blowing because then if I do feel imposter syndrome, that means that I'm not an imposter. And it's a good sign, it's a good signal. So I shift that into something bad to something good in my mind. Like whenever I feel like I don't belong, I'm like, no, I'm feeling like that because I deserve to be here. So it became my favorite word. And like, I love to talk about it with people when they approach me and they feel the same, especially new Googlers at this point, because my, discovery moment of talking to people and getting coffee chats and making sure that I'm building that personal brand. Whenever I talk to new Googlers as well, they all have the same imposter syndrome. They all have the same insecurities, and we bond on that. So that's really interesting.
Oh, I love that answer. That's really interesting. Like I have a very like that. My answer is not as good. I just really
What's your answer? Let's hear it.
I just really like the word yes, but there's a tone to it. It's not just any yes. It's a yes. It's a I love this. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. Whoa! Like there's a tone to it. Because I really truly believe that if you put your mind to it, if there's a will, there's a way. I'm like, I really, I persevere to a fault, maybe, but yeah.
But like you love the intonation enough, love the meaning because of the possibilities that are open, or the fact that people are like really excited about something, or both?
I think both. I think, yes, let's do this. Like, I think there's this notion of we have an idea, whether it be good or not. Like, the optimism, the momentum, the doer, the 3 solutions to every problem, the let's bite into life, let's carpe diem that comes into it. So it's a yes, but it's the spirit behind the yes that I think is really interesting, which is let's make this happen. Like paving the word. I'm like, why shouldn't we we should turn left? Yes, let's turn left. I'm like, good. Okay. I think
let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Versus sitting there and going, I don't know. I think yes unlocks a lot. Like you can U-turn, you can detour, but I think it has to start with yes. I think life happens when we say yes.
Yeah.
I agree. See? Yeah. And there's a type of yes. It's not the same.
Yeah.
It's not the same. And what is your least favorite word?
Someday. Because like when you say someday, I'm going to do it. Someday I'm going to go for their job. Someday I'm going to, change countries. Someday I'm going to try to be more healthy. Yeah. That's where like things don't happen. That's where the dreams are.
Yeah.
So that word.
I don't believe in dreams. I really like this notion of if you won $1 million, what we do. I'm like, it's not like,
that's such a hypothetical scenario. Like, it doesn't matter.
I'd rather play the game of if you had to live without without ears or without toes, which one would you choose? I think that's more fun. Like never, as a hypothetical, you've never played that game?
No.
Oh, we have to play that game. So I do it with my son and my husband quite a bit, and they come up with scenarios. If you had to choose between, like the last one Zach threw out at me, it made me crack up. He's like, if you had to choose that whenever there's there's music, you dance uncontrollably, or that every time there's music, you break out in song, which one would you choose? And you're like, oh, what's the least? And then last time, and we were having a debate and a conversation for critical thinking, having fun and joking. And then we were sitting at the bar at a restaurant, my son and I, and there's this massive song that came out. He's like, see, would you rather like have to sing right now or have to dance? Like it comes back in conversation sometimes.
That's so interesting. Okay, we'll definitely play this in our next coffee chat for sure.
Yeah, I'll come up with a few scenarios for you. My 14-year-old is pretty good. I just said I sit at the bar with my 14-year-old in Montreal. It's a bistro, it's a restaurant, it's allowed, just for the record, just in case. And what is my last question, and we'll wrap it up with this because I want to be mindful of everybody's time. But what is the best thing that a mentor has shared with you or told you that still to this day is kind of a North Star, or like a guiding principle that's useful to you?
Yeah. So there's 2 things. One came from my dad. My dad was always super like savvy with business and people, and he always would tell me like, always take the meeting. Just, be open to sit down and listen and make sure that you can understand what's being asked and what the opportunity is. And then after that, you can evaluate if you want or not. But like always take the meeting is something that I kind of like put into like inside of me and guided me. Like sometimes I would, like a recruiter on LinkedIn would like say, hey, you want to chat about an opportunity? I was like, not really interesting, but why not? Let's just listen to it. And I feel like this is a specific example, but there's so many like in my personal life examples as well, because you can take this however you like. And this was my dad, but then a mentor more specifically for corporate told me that I shouldn't be attached to my success. So especially for people that are growing fast in the beginning of their career, to be like, oh no, now I got this title, now I got this got into this company, and I don't need to like do much anymore, or like I'm so successful, I don't need to do anything. Like, no, don't be attached to it. Like, learn to be a beginner over and over again. I feel like when I moved to Canada, that was my number one mantra every day. Is like, people don't know you, you don't know anything. Like, don't be attached to anything you know, just be open to absorb and listen. And that's kind of like where everything stems from for me. So yeah, those two things.
Yeah, I think there's something that and my father played a role too, because he owned the business too. But I think so. There's work ethic and whatnot comes from home, right? I think in that sense. But it's interesting playing back on that. I was watching, what was it, on Instagram or whatever, and there was this amazing, elegant lady in New York, and she'd been a New Yorker forever. And someone came up to her and said, what is it? Like, you seem like you've got stuff figured out. And she was wearing a pinstripe suit with like a fluorescent thing, like she's totally New York, white hair, totally owning it, like moving like a Gen Z essentially. And then she said, never take it easy. That was her thing. And I think it's interesting because we're at different stages of our career. Not that I'm like past it, but I'm a few years older. And it's interesting how that at this point of my time, like this notion of not being attached to your success, but also not taking it easy because you've had those milestones, like still being hard on yourself and still expecting to sort of do better, be better, and keep growing. And I think if you've been doing the same thing for a really long time, I think that's keeping it fresh, and that's keeping it new and novel, and keeping you at the forefront of, and keeping that passion that we've started talking about like an hour ago alive in that sense. So yeah.
And I think like there's an interesting thing about how much you can cap yourself mentally if you believe success is where you are right now, because it's a ever moving pole, and it's so subjective. And what is it really like? So it's just about, as you said, keeping the bar high to yourself and making sure you always have that open mindset to grow. Like, I always joke, there's always two types of pain: the pain of being stagnant and the pain of growing. And I always go for the pain of growing every time. Like, every time.
I think we're just summarizing this amazing like book from the 90s, just like retro on you as a millennial, but which is Who Moved My Cheese. If you've never read it, it's like a 30-minute read or whatever. It's like a tiny one, but it's two mice essentially. And then they are in a maze, like the classic analogy, they're in a maze and there's a piece of cheese. And then they had to every day kind of put their running shoes on and figure out where the cheese was, and then go back. And then at one point the cheese kind of started always being at the same spot, and there was a lot of it. And one mouse just stopped putting on her running shoes or their running shoes. And the mouse was just, clearly they're feminine in my both girls, like I totally but anyways, but one would just not take care, like just stroll casually, show up at the cheese later in the day, like just take it for granted and just leisurely take it easy type of thing. And the other one, and she was kind of the one taking easy, was joking and laughing at the one who kept lacing up her running shoes or their running shoes every day. And one day the cheese moved. And then the taking it easy one just was out of breath, out of shape, couldn't do it. And the other one just a typical day, usual day, found the cheese and ended up feeding the other one.
Yeah. So that's just life in a nutshell right there.
Yeah. So you don't have to read the book now. Okay, Victoria, this has been simply amazing. I will see you in a few weeks. We need to catch up in person because I feel this is fabulous. But I mean, there's nothing like just,
And let me just say, first of all, thank you so much for the space. Thank you so much for inviting me. I don't feel worthy being here, but I'm working on that. However, I just want to say you're one of the most amazing insights professional I had the opportunity to work with and connect with. So thank you so, so much for the space and everything you do for our brands, for our companies in Canada. You're so amazing. Thank you.
Oh, you're simply fabulous. Thank you. That just made my day. Oh, thank you. And you don't have imposter syndrome. You are definitely worthy of being here. Definitely. Like, trust me, you're definitely, I think there's a lot of people, especially post-COVID, there's a lot of people coming in, and I really believe that the insights industry, maybe because I'm more on the qual side, is not a second or third career. You don't need to have a whole bunch of wisdom to be a thought leader. I think you can be young and be really smart, and be a thought leader and be really insightful. You don't need to be old and wise to be insightful. So I think, you embody that perfectly. So right back at you, babe. Okay. So thank you so much for joining us, Victoria. And for our listeners, tune in to our next episode. We'll have another surprise. We'll spark more inspiration. But Victoria, definitely, you can listen to this one on repeat. This was fabulous. Thank you.
Liz. Have a great day. Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Insightful Inspiration, your trusted market research podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with your network, and we'd love it if you could leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. For more on this episode and others, head over to sylvesco.com. And remember, insight isn't just about what we uncover, it's how we let it shape our actions. Until next time, stay curious, be kind, and keep seeking inspiration. We'll see you soon.